everyone for listening in today. On today's episode, I have Yousef with me, Albarqawi, who joins us. He is the co-founder and CEO of a company called alfii. Now, it's to me, and maybe I'm a niche subset. It's a very exciting organization to hear about. I'm so happy to see that it's popped up its head here in the Middle East, and I know that it's going places. So I wanted to have Yousef on our show today to join us and to tell us a little bit more about what alfii is and how everyone who's listening in will definitely be interested in learning more about it. Yousef is what I would call a serial entrepreneur. He has helped to lead and start up a number of organizations throughout his career. He's also worked with global organizations such as Deliveroo for quite some time, where he headed up editions for them for APAC and Middle East, and also, of course, has exposure to the European market as well. So a lot of insight, a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise that comes with Yousef. Yousef, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And also, one thing to add on to that is a very proud girl dad as well. 3 girls, and if one of them happens to come knocking throughout the call, now you know what's going on. So something else I'm very proud of.
No, that is something to be really proud of. I also have 2 small children. I have them popping up in my videos all the time. So we're a family welcoming show. Okay.
Excellent. Excellent.
So Yousef, let's dive right into today's discussion. I'm sure everyone that's listening wants to know, what is alfii? What are we talking about? So can you tell us a little bit about what alfii is as a product and how the idea was born?
Sure. So alfii is an HR management software company where we build a system that would help startups, small, medium businesses, and even some larger businesses to manage the full employee life cycle from hire to retire, as the phrase goes. We built alfii. We started building it about just a little over a year ago. And well, you might say, okay, Yousef, this is a quite competitive space with definitely a whole lot of players in it. But we really noticed a couple of things kind of coming into it. As you mentioned, kind of my background as an operator and kind of working organizations across multiple countries, multiple sizes. And I always found I've worked very closely with HR professionals throughout my entire career, where I've hired and managed well over 1,000 people. And there's always been a common thread whenever I looked at that. And you've worked at a very consumer-centric company as Amazon, Deliveroo, kind of Amazon was our North Star when it came to how customer-centric and customer-obsessed everything needed to be. But I always found that the tools that we used as the internal customers of the company, as the employees of the company, I always found such a big gap in between how those products are. And this isn't anybody's fault. It's just kind of the products in the market always prioritized function over form, function over user experience. So one of the kind of the seeds that were planted with alfii is, why can't a product do the job and also be pleasant to use? Why does there have to be such a huge very steep learning curve when it comes to just learning how to use something very, and I'm not talking about the use from an expert's point of view that you'd be using as an HR professional, but as an employee, if I just want to apply to take some time off or file an expense or just know how many days leave I have until the end of the year, which 9 times out of 10, what ends up happening is I end up messaging you asking, like, how many days off do I have left until the end of the year? So it seems like all those products, everybody's using them, and it's kind of the Stockholm syndrome when it comes to these products. We use them because we have to, and there's no product love when it comes to all of these things. So alfii was born to help solve this problem, but also to do it in a very delightful and a very consumer-centric way.
I can't tell you how valuable that is. As you said, everybody struggles with having tools in place that are just easy to use. And no matter how much resources you dedicate, money you dedicate, time you dedicate to training, it's never simple enough for someone to just pick up and understand how to use it. I think the larger the organization, the more they move towards, training materials, guides that they prepare to be able to have an employee look through and kind of self-educate on how to use the system. For me, if it's not simple enough for me to just open it and see right there in front of me, apply for leave, file an expense, something as simple as that, it's going to take me time to learn it. And that time is always frustrating. It's never a fun time. So it's, it's great to see that this was the reason behind the product, and that, this is what kind of shaped and molded how you guys built it.
Yeah, and look, one thing to add on to that is you also have to think about, like, on average, how many times per year is a user going to use the product? And we say user, whether it is on the administrative side or whether it is the user on the quote unquote consumer side. If I'm just an employee using any HR management system within a company, I'll on average use it about 4 times a year. And so the training that you will have given upon onboarding, how much of that is going to stick until the next time that I actually kind of log on to this product? And as I mentioned, 9 times out of 10, you can expect a Slack or a Teams or whatever other form of internal communication message of, how do I do this again? Do you mind if you help me with this? So it ends up defeating the purpose entirely. And these systems, especially at large organizations, it could be a pretty hefty build that takes a very long time to implement. So again, just kind of going back to our previous, where we used to be before, I've yet to see a single piece of content out there that teaches a single user how to use any Amazon products, or how to use Netflix, or how to use any of these apps that are being used by millions, because they have invested so much time in making sure that the experience is intuitive and easy. And of course, the buy now button works this way. Like, obviously, that took a very long time and a very heavy investment to achieve. And for some reason, enterprise products don't always prioritize that to a certain extent. And that's really something that we wanted to tackle pretty early on. So I'm happy to know that that pain point was very much felt on your side as well throughout your years.
100%. I don't know anyone where that pain point wasn't felt. So you're definitely solving for something. Let's talk about the success that alfii's had so far, because it's, as you said, it's a year into its journey, right? Since the idea was born, and you can look at it as a very, very successful startup already. I mean, if you look at the amount that was raised pre-seed, it's much more than your average kind of company within this industry, or within these kind of software companies. And it's a direct indication that the product obviously is not only useful, but believed in and needed very early on. So what would you say you tapped into that made it that successful?
Look, we're still very, very early stage. So I would say, well, first of all, thank you so much for that. That's really nice of you. But we really see ourselves as just getting started. We have a very long journey ahead of us in terms of what the product can do and what problems it can solve, and what it can do to help change perception and usability around products like this, which I think can do with a very heavy improvement. But we've definitely tapped into whether it is on the consumer side or kind of anything else in between, is that there's clearly a need for this product space, especially in our region, to take place. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one is the very quickly changing regulations, especially if you take GCC countries, whether it is around things like, whether it's taxes or social security or kind of salary contributions that be coming out of employee salaries, or the incoming very soon, even though it's not called a pension, but it's kind of like a pension-like program where kind of end of service benefits will need to be managed in a certain way. So the administrative list is starting to grow considerably when it comes to managing people. And quite frankly, the tool space right now needs to catch up. Otherwise, that is just, look, Excel and Google Sheets can do everything. They're wonderful products, but God help you if you mess up one formula and then the whole thing breaks, and then all of a sudden, you're in a lot of trouble. So that's really one kind of core thesis as to why we think there's an exciting space. And the second one is, you have one of the biggest digitization waves that we've ever seen kind of happening in the region. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about what's happening in Saudi, and that's very exciting. But one thing maybe that doesn't get talked about as much is how much digitization is coming in as well. You have companies being passed down from one generation to the next, and that next generation is fully digitally native. That's how they live their lives. That's how they consume their content, buy their food, buy their groceries. by pretty much everything else, and they want that reflected in how they work as well. And what we're doing is definitely in that direction of helping leaders and companies kind of achieve that vision, but also solve for the very real kind of administrative workload that is going to be very challenging, that is right around the corner. And this is kind of where we see the opportunity, but also the problem that we're trying to solve.
And I was going to ask that. I was going to ask you what you felt was the biggest pain point that you solved, but I think you've actually listed so many that are pain points in parallel. It solves for so many. So I can completely understand it. Let's talk about the core element of your product that you think provides the main value add to your customer.
So there's a few things that we have invested very heavily in that we thought from the very beginning, irrespective of what problems we want to solve first, whether it is time off or expense management or anything else like that. We wanted first and foremost to make sure that as a user, your journey, the beginning of your journey with alfii has to be seamless. And what I mean by that is that you're onboarding, you have companies that would quote you something in the manner of months, if not over a year, to complete the implementation of an HR management product, not to mention thousands upon thousands. So there's a cost barrier, and there's also a time barrier. So really wanted to make sure that you as a user today, irrespective of the size of your organization, can go onto alfii, you can create an account and start using it straight away. So the ability to kind of have this very intuitive experience that enables users to immediately catch on to the product, know what they need to do without a lot of guesswork and a lot of hand-holding, that's something that's really substantial. So really investing very heavily in the user experience, investing very heavily, even though that's something that's not very user-facing, on the engineering side of things, which is something I'm really personally very proud of. That means that we can build our product in a more cost-effective way, and then being able to pass that savings on to you as the user, as the company. We know companies are very cost-conscious right now, so we want to build a product that provides them the requisite quality without compromise, but also being able to do that in a very cost-friendly manner. But in terms of functionality, as you know, with HR management systems, there are basic principles that you're going to need. There are basic functionalities that you're going to have to solve for. And we have all of those boxes checked, whether it is from pre-boarding and onboarding, time off, payroll management, including native payroll processing, when it's just like, again, sorry to keep mentioning Amazon again, but like a checkout button, kind of very similar to that. So we have all of these bases covered. We have some really exciting analytics features as well coming out. ChatGPT is a phenomenal thing and has captured a lot of people's imaginations, but it does a very good job telling you about the world. We're building something that tells you about your own company as well, so you can just ask alfii questions. Giving you a bit of a sneak peek here, but that's something that we're working on right now, where you can ask alfii questions about what is going on in your company, how many employees you have, how many people in engineering, how much end of service liabilities you're going to have by the end of the year. So everything that we're doing is all centered around like kind of really optimizing for that seamless, but also very friendly user experience. So this is what I would say is what really differentiates us in a category that, quite frankly, is very commoditized. We have to do something that's different and exciting.
I'm hearing something new. I'm hearing analytics. I'm hearing data. I'm hearing metrics at the click of a button or on hand. I'm hearing employee support and the simplified, easy, supportive user experience. And I have to say that's probably why it's been so successful so far, because you don't find all of that in one software system. So I'm excited to see kind of what more comes out of that. And like the Ask Alfie, thank you for that sneak peek.
coming soon. It's still in development, but that's coming soon.
Very, very, very cool. Okay, so you've told us about the value add for your customers or the organizations. To me, it sounds like it's mirrored in the value add for the employee. Is there anything that you haven't mentioned that you think would be an additional value add for the employee?
Well, for the employee, you want to make sure that the information that you want is at your fingertips, so that at any point, again, you can ask, what is the annual leave policy, or when do I have to file do I have to submit a document if I'm on sick leave or anything like that? What I really want to make sure is that the employees are able to get the information that they want when they want, without having to remember, oh, what was that training like? You know, what did we kind of go through, and kind of having a dig through their emails. So really making sure that it, you know, the amount of work that it would take them to send you a message to ask that question, it'll be an equal, you know, we want it to be an equal amount of effort for them to find the answer within alfii. So, you know, that user experience goes both ways, and really being able to reduce the amount of time that is going to be spent by employees and managers alike in managing that relationship, reducing the time for, you know, out of those repetitive questions and taking that out of the way. Everybody benefits from the end, and it really opens up the time for you, for someone, and you know, in your profession as well, to focus on the things that you really believe move the needle and really add value, whether it is learning and development or engagement, or how do you grow your people, how do you ensure their wellness. Those things can be very time consuming in and of themselves, but if your bandwidth is being challenged by all of these very repetitive administrative tasks, something has to give, right? So we want to make sure that the employee benefits from the bandwidth that is being opened up with your time as well. So even though that might not be direct, but eventually it will come back to them as well.
It has an impact, 100%.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about success metrics, okay? Because you mentioned a lot of analytics that are baked in within alfii. I'm interested to know, as a co-founder, as a CEO, what are the success metrics for your platform?
Look, at a very early stage, you just need to make sure that everything is up and to the right. You know, whether it is your new users, your sessions, time per session, you know, how often people are coming back, how many employees are they adding, how quickly are they adding all of these employees. You know, we really want to make sure whenever one of these metrics is not moving in the direction that we want it to, there's always a question as to why. If we launch a new feature and we see that, you know, people are spending a lot less time on this feature than they would on others, and we also have to ask, well, why is that? What's missing? And it all comes back to any metric that is not moving in the direction that we'd want, and there's definitely a lot of them. So there's some revenue metrics when you want to look at, you know, your monthly recurring revenue, annual recurring revenue, and your getting in the weeds here. But the most important thing, you know, for me, that we want to track more than anything else is just we want to make sure that our NPS, or our, you know, basically the metric that measures how much our customers are happy with our product, that's really the metric that we want to spend the most time on. And obviously everything else that leads to how consumers are getting or not getting value out of the product, because everything else will start falling if that metric you know, starts to aim in the wrong direction. So really taking a lot of what we're doing is we're taking a lot of those consumer product metrics that we would have focused on in our previous careers, and we're bringing that mindset into an enterprise product. So these are the things that we really want to focus on and want to be kind of our guiding principle in our decision making.
And in terms of your customers, okay, because I know that obviously sometimes when an idea is born and when you're kind of working your way through your journey, ideas get tweaked, right? As you're kind of moving along, or pilot something, change it, learn from it, and so on. Who is your target audience, and has that changed?
What has changed, like if we were talking about a year ago, there's definitely a few elements within the product vision that has changed or tweaked. If there's one truth in businesses of any kind, is that you can never spend too much time talking to customers. They are your most honest and most useful critic. Everyone else is either being nice or just, you know, really not having, quite frankly, enough skin in the game to give you an honest, not an honest opinion, but an opinion that that is actionable. So that's obviously has guided a lot of decisions that we've made over the last few months based on just user feedback. But as far as our target customers are concerned, there is one category of users, which is the very large enterprise that would typically have these multi-million-dollar systems in place, SAP, Oracle, kind of all of these things that would serve kind of a larger purpose. Typically, an HR management system would fall within that, or there's a whole other category of products like Workday, for example, that works for that. But really what that category of company is, that's 1% of the market. you have the entire kind of rest of the market, that bottom 99% of the market, if for the lack of a better word, which encompasses startups, small business, SMEs, mid-market companies that can sometimes, number in the thousands and thousands of employees that are still being managed out of Excel and Google Sheets. We thought that at like maybe the 500 employee level, that would be our ceiling initially, and that we really won't be getting much success afterward. But then we were really surprised that we're seeing companies that are, and really prominent companies, I don't want to name names here, but in the 4, 5, 6,000 employees, and still being managed out of Excel and Google Sheets. One, we had a chief people officer, and we met with, again, a very well-known company here in the region. And we asked her, how many employees do you have? Just a very basic qualification question we asked. And she couldn't really answer. And not because she didn't, there's a kind of any issue in competency, far from it. It's just that they had this kind of employee, when a company is of that size, even a small attrition rate translates into a very high number of people. So she says, well, I don't really know for sure, because the process of updating our employee count is very manual and it's being done on Excel sheets. And this was pretty early on in our stage. This is where we're like, okay, hold on. So there's a whole kind of category of the market that we didn't think we would need us, really, because we thought they'd be using something else. And we were surprised that, no, they're not. Still, by far and away, the biggest market leaders are still Excel and Google Sheets. So we started to set our aim a little bit higher in terms of size of companies. So, in our pipeline, we have companies as small as 10 people and as big as 2,000 and more. Oh, wow. So that's, yeah. And where that falls into the SME kind of spectrum of sizes, that's some subjectivity to that. But yeah, but it's just kind of that 1%, the top 1% in terms of size of companies. We haven't really been going after that for a lot of functional reasons, and just in all likelihood, the cost of change for them would be exceptionally high, even if they would consider a product like ours.
Right. Yeah. The Excel, Google Sheets companies definitely do exist. And yeah, there are an abundance of them. I think, like you said, there's also that subset of companies. Like, I've spoken to a number of HR professionals. Recently, I was speaking with one where, and this is a mid-sized organization. This is not a small organization by any means. Okay. Yeah. And they're working off Excel sheets and Google Sheets. And when I asked the question why, the response was, it works. Like, it's always worked. So like, why change it? But then when you tell them, what about pulling out reports? What about having data on hand? What about updates to those sheets? Who's inputting that time? It's a very manual effort, and you're taking away time that could be used from your employees, elsewhere, something more productive, let's say, or proactive. So it definitely exists. It definitely exists, and it's good to hear you haven't kind of put yourself or restricted yourself to a smaller pool, because it's needed.
It's such a human trait that sometimes when it works, even when it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, you just go with it. And I can give you example after example, not even from professional life, but even from personal life. We have an electric oven at home, and the temperature regulator was broken on it. And for whatever reason, we used it for like a good year and a half it's not because we couldn't get someone to fix it. We're just like, oh, we manage it. We open the door a little bit to let out some heat, get a thermometer. And then at one point, like, why don't we just fix it? Like, it just, bring someone in. It was literally like a couple of hours. And like, now it sets to the temperature that you would want it to. So to your point, sometimes you kind of find a way to become an expert at a broken system. And then, with those Excel sheets, we're talking with another company the other day, and the operations manager had this beautifully designed and clearly, like, very well thought through Excel sheet that covers everything. I was telling him, like, look, you've basically built our product in Excel, so good for you. So why are we talking here? How can we help? He's like, because I'm afraid to hand this over to anyone. Because if I hand this over to anyone and they do one wrong entry, I wouldn't even know where to start looking. So there's also, like, all these sheets these tools like Excel and all that, super powerful, can do anything you'd want them to. But there's a level of expertise that's required to be able to manipulate them, especially in things like this, like kind of HR management, that would make them that transfer of knowledge becomes really risky and very difficult to do.
That's very true. I try my best to build things that are not person specific, okay?
Yeah.
But sometimes you just can't help it. And it's true, I also find myself sometimes in positions where I'm like, I've built this report and it's evolved and it's like, it masters everything that I need it to do. But I've spent the better part of 6 months building it. I don't know how comfortable I am handing it over, So I resonate completely with that. Can you help our listeners to understand so far kind of the size of your customer base of companies that have bought into alfii?
I think we've had a little over 320 companies so far that have signed on to the platform. So we launched publicly in November of last year, and we were in beta for a little while as kind of we're rolling out and iterating on some features that we had. And the product came out of beta as of June of this year, so a couple of months ago. So yeah, in that time, we've been very grateful and thankful to have a really kind of strong interest from users of, as I mentioned, of all different shapes and sizes to come in. But still very, very early days. Our sites are definitely quite big, even though almost the entirety, I would say like over 90% of our current users are in the UAE. But our sites are obviously to get up and running in Saudi pretty soon, and we really see alfii as a solution for the larger MENA region as well. So even though we have launched out of the UAE, but we have already set our sites and have been starting to make moves as well to start offering our full suite of services in other markets. So again, maybe another sneak peek as well. So this is something that we're very actively working on at the moment.
Actually, I'm glad that you mentioned it because I was going to sneak in a question about the regional reach. So you beat me to it. So thank you for that. No, that's, obviously needed everywhere. I mean, you're based here, so I understand also the industry, the way that organizations work in the UAE, where we are as a market, how fast we're moving. It makes sense that alfii starts off here, but of course, we're in the Middle East region. Saudi is booming. You have other countries. Like if you look at MENA, you have Egypt, you have Jordan, you have a number of other countries where this is obviously going to be beneficial. And in places like Saudi, where the population is so high, the number of organizations so high, and that move to automation or to utilizing tools, it's still in some ways at its earlier stages. So coming into the market at that time, obviously it makes sense, so
and especially look for companies that have employees across, and there's a lot of multinational companies as well. So and you see that across the board. And one of the reasons why I started to build alfii in the first place is out of my own personal frustrations as an operator, where I had I had employees across multiple countries. And this was at a company where I was chief operating officer a little while ago. We had employees or hiring employees across 3 countries. We were hiring almost 600 employees over the span of like 4 months. And for me to find a product that helped me in under one roof to solve and manage my employees across those 3 countries, trust me, I really struggled to find something that did that and solved our, quite frankly, not very unique problems. We had very, very simple problems and very simple issues that we wanted to solve for. And we just really couldn't find something that did that on a basic level at the time. And so, having a product that is able to offer you equal amount of value across different countries and offer you that unique and consistent user experience, that is also something why we feel it's even more important that alfii has a presence in more than one place, so that it could offer that value for HR professionals who are having to manage employees across multiple locations.
I personally actually have had experience with that. I have been in a position where I myself was working in a global organization. My team was spread across a number of geographies. The leave management tool that was utilized is different in each country. So it's not one tool. And if I'm applying for leave and my manager is using a different tool, she's or he is unable to get my leave, to approve it. They don't know, so then you're left moving through or speaking through email to try and to get things approved. And then don't get me started on getting it from an email to the system. That is a whole other. So so it's definitely another pain point that I think everyone's really familiar with.
You know what? One thing that we've done, and really from day one, and we will continue to do so. I don't think that'll ever be something we stop doing. What you're mentioning as far as pain points are concerned, we've also done, I don't even know how many a number of hours and hundreds of hours we've done in terms of user research and speaking with HR professionals like yourself, and really to understand all of these little nuances. And really what you come away with it realizing is that yes, there are some companies that have their unique issues and unique challenges that they need to solve individually, but there's such a large overlap of problems that just kind of occur over and over again. And you've definitely hit a few of them on the head here. So that's why, we've always made it a point to over-invest, if anything, in that information gathering and just listening to users and customers as much as possible so that we can continue aiming the product and building it in the right direction, so that things which, what you're saying sounds pretty intuitive as a solution, and you'd think like the people in charge would have kind of seen through that problem, but it's rarely that straightforward. It's rarely that simple. These buying decisions are usually done in silo from each other as well. So as you say, like the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So there's a lot of that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, and now that you've tapped into this specific industry, are there certain, because you're kind of building out, you're going to continue to build out alfii as you progress, and as companies use it, come back to you with feedback and so on. So what are the trends that you've seen across this industry that your product is tapping into?
Well, there's a study that was published by McKinsey, I want to say about a year and a half ago, and they had surveyed the CHROs and chief people officers at 5,000 of the world's biggest companies. And 95% of them said that their number one priority over the next 5 years is to fully digitize their workflows. And these are people who, as far as products are concerned, are shopping at like the highest possible level of products that are available to them. So if you have people on that level saying that we really need to digitize a lot of our workflows, that really shows you just kind of how, unfortunately, quite far behind the profession is serviced from a product's perspective. And one core reason for that is until 3 years ago, HR was, and again, this is just the feedback that we're getting, was seen in a lot of organizations almost like a client servicing, and your clients are the employees. It was seen as a cost center. It was seen as an administrative task, an administrative role. I strongly object to that, but that was the point of view. And then, sorry to bring this up, but COVID happened. Who was the department that everyone looked to completely reimagine how we work? Who had to step in for companies' perspective to save the day? It was HR departments. And they had to completely reimagine, how do we keep people engaged? How do we hire? How do we manage time? And everything in between. So now you had these teams and these departments who were very under-resourced in terms of tools, were very under-resourced in terms of people, and all of a sudden having to seamlessly transition, not to mention kind of all of the turmoil and all of the challenges the team and people were facing in general at that time. And now they're being tasked and asked to completely reimagine that. And now that's swinging in the other direction again. But again, then it was very clear, like, no, you have to empower this role. You have to give them the tool. You have to give them the bandwidth. You have to give them the capacity in order to be able to build the team that you want to deliver the product or the service that you want. So it's not just a cost center or just like an administrative center that hires people and manages their payroll and makes sure that their documents are in check. No, there is so much more to that. And tools play an incredibly important role to that. Those same companies, ask them what the set of tools that they have to manage their sales looks like, or to manage their marketing automation look like? And you will find some exceptionally smart and capable products doing things that you can only imagine. So this is where kind of we see that trend of really digitizing so many more elements within HR workflows, as we mentioned, still not just in our region, by the way, just even at large, Excel and Google Sheets still own that space. You don't see Excel and Google Sheets owning, CRM or internal sales or marketing, or you don't see that. So this is where we think or at least the trend that we're seeing, that the market is very heavily going in that direction of digitization, automation, and really just taking better care of your employees, which ultimately and always reflects on the product and service that you're trying to provide and sell as a business.
And that's something that I'm hearing from so many of the individuals that I'm speaking with. It's come up time and time and time again in my podcast when I'm speaking with them. This concept and idea of pushing HR transformation now is needed, and it follows through with things like automation and tools and resources, and how to invest in your employee population, how to support them, how to engage them, and the differences or the changes that are happening in terms of behaviors of what employees are requiring, what they need as a basic minimum, are things like tools, just tools that are easy and simple to use, that help to support them, where they don't need to, take time out of their day or reach out to somebody to ask a question, just how to simplify them working through their day. And so we're seeing this, and it's definitely a hot topic. It's definitely relevant for now. I don't think there's a better time, honestly, for alfii. I really don't. So
betting the business on it, that's for sure. That's what we're doing.
What would you say, Yousef? What's next for alfii?
Well, as I mentioned, for us, a couple of things. One of them is there's some really, really exciting features that we have coming up next, and we really want to make sure that not only are we able to meet client expectations as to what an HRMS can do, but I really want to introduce a little bit of a wow factor when it comes to our product, that people are using it and seeing something that they're just not really seeing across the board, and not just different for the sake of being different, but different for the sake of making sure, like, how can we reimagine that user experience and make sure that it lives up to the bar that we have set for ourselves. So new features coming soon, new markets hopefully coming soon as well. So look, we have a very aggressive, very ambitious rather, vision ahead of us. We really see ourselves as a new generation of this product space. We really see this as a difference in form factor, not just in functionality for the space, and this is what we're trying to introduce. So I think I've shared a couple of little tidbits with you today, a couple of sneak peeks of some of the things that are to come. But it's all in that direction. Expanding features, expanding markets. Those are the two big things that we're focusing on right now.
I love it. And for all of you HR talent experts that are listening in, you heard it here first. Contact alfii. They have a solution for pretty much every problem that you're probably experiencing. So I advocate for it. Yousef, I think you've done a fantastic job of giving everybody insight to what you've built and what you are continuing to build. It's so nice to see progress in this space. So please, for everyone that's listening in, reach out if you have any questions for myself or Yousef about alfii, when you can get your hands on it. We'll be happy to kind of help you through. And if you have any feedback or questions in particular for Yousef or myself, feel free to, of course, ping them over. Yousef, thank you so much for joining me today. It was actually a very nice conversation. I enjoyed having you on my show, and I appreciate everything that you've kind of shared with me today.
Thank you, and look, again, thank you for bringing us on board and for hosting me. I really feel for you and for professionals, HR professionals like yourself. Which I don't know if I mentioned this, by the way, but my mother-in-law is an HR professional with over 40 years, so I definitely have someone that I really need to keep in mind,
keep
to
her
make
happy.
sure that keep her happy as well. So that's someone that I really need to think about as well. Look, obviously, alfii is here to help with solving a lot of these problems. At the moment, anybody could go to alfii.co, create an account and start using it straight away, and see what all the fuss is about. And yeah, we'll be happy to kind of help chip away at these problems. So yeah, look, thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Of course, and thank you so much. Anyone who's listening in, like, subscribe, get in touch, give us your feedback, and tune in for the next episode. Thank you.